some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
It is once again time to get back in that Halloween season mood. You are listening to the Ho Effin' Show, MTO, and the other guy, and this is our Halloween movie series review, where we rate the franchise from our least to most favorite, and we encourage all of you to let us know how you would rate the franchise. But I'm sure by the end of the video, you're all gonna agree with me anyway.
Yes, indeed. You know, when I watched these movies as a kid, I was absolutely petrified. I even remember one night when I was trying to go to sleep, there was like a coat hanging out, and I was sure that was Michael Myers, so I screamed out loud. And the worst part was, that was back when I shared a room with my parents, so you know, of course I wasn't allowed to watch those movies again, but of course I watched them anyway because I didn't give a fork. Halloween is it's just a great series in general. Like, it's one of those things where it's made up by a lot of decent pieces and it just molds together to make a great series. Like, there's a few cases of some series that, you know, there's not one particular thing that's going to blow you away, but the whole thing in general you could just refer to as great.
So let's kick things off. I think every Halloween fan can agree the worst movie of the series has to be Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. You want to know how irrelevant this movie is? I didn't even realize up until a couple years ago that I never watched this movie before. It is one of those movies that was so bad they want you to forget it exists. This movie made the mistake of trying to add a backstory to a killer that already had a good enough backstory. You notice how every time a film has done that, it ends up being so bad that the very next movie reboots the entire series. Just look at Jason Goes to Hell and Freddy's Dead. We already knew everything that we needed to know about Jason, Freddy, and Michael. We didn't need any overcomplicated excuse as to why they're so evil. If this movie had taken away that stupid cult idea, it might have been decent, because the kills here were probably some of the best in the series. But that cult idea just dragged the whole movie down.
We can both agree that the weakest movie in the series was 6. For those of you who are not familiar with which one it is, it's the one labeled The Curse of Michael Myers, because thank God they couldn't even put a number on it, which is how bad they was. And the kills were creative, the kills were cool. You know, the opening one where he killed the pregnant Jamie, I think that was pretty cool. I never saw something like that before. But you know, aside from that, the storyline was weak. I mean, yeah, the whole cult thing was a little bit interesting, but not for a Michael Myers movie. The character development was not that great. The only one I could really get behind was Tommy, but even then, the only reason I could get behind him is because when you pictured him, all you pictured was that little kid from the original Halloween movie. But his character in this movie was this creepy guy that took pictures of his neighbor changing, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the neighbor decided, hey, this guy, maybe I should date this guy. That whole emergency room scene was pretty damn epic. I think that may have been one of the best scenes in the entire story, but again, aside from that, this movie, I should say, was awful. And this was so bad that they only used the theme song twice. I counted.
The second worst movie of the series for me has to be the Halloween 2007 remake. First off, this made the same mistake that The Curse of Michael Myers made. It tried to give Michael Myers a backstory that he didn't need. What made Michael Myers so great in the first place was that he was the boogeyman. He was an evil, dark, mysterious, emotionless figure that couldn't be stopped. This movie basically just tells us that he's just a screwed up kid that comes from a redneck family and got picked on at school, and somehow that gives him superhuman abilities. Everything about this movie felt like a cheap copy of the original, except with more swearing and nudity. Now trust me, I'm a guy that likes boobs as much as anyone else, but this tries way too hard to be cool and edgy, and it just comes across as forced and annoying. They make all the characters unlikable and obnoxious. It makes Dr. Loomis into a douchebag, and overall, it just butchers everything great about the Halloween franchise. The only redeeming quality that this film has is Danielle Harris's tits, but even that wasn't enough to save this from being complete trash.
Okay, first of all, I completely disagree with your assessment. I think that was a total 180 of what they were going for with that movie. Coming up next on mine was also a remake, but it was Halloween 2, the remake. Now, generally, I was looking forward to this one. This may have been the most anticipated Halloween in my life. Disappointment after disappointment ended up being the result. You know, there were a few cool kills here and there. They did a cool scene at the strip club where the guy is taking out the trash and challenges Michael Myers to a fight, and obviously he gets his ass kicked. But one thing that really pissed me off about the movie was made Michael Myers look old and fat and like a hippie and disgusting. And I understand that the guy's human, but the whole point is we're not supposed to know that he's human. They had a decent thing going with Laurie's whole emo seg, and then they ended up killing off Danielle Harris for no reason. And then in the end, it's just like he captures Laurie again for no reason, and then he just ends up getting shot. So this was just totally like mind-blowing and not in a good way. I've never been so disappointed with a horror movie in my life.
Gonna have to agree a little bit right there. Up next on my list is also the Halloween 2 remake. While this one was just as bad as the first one, and maybe even worse, the advantage I give this one is that it doesn't try to be anything like the original. So it doesn't have that same stigma that the first one had, where everything just feels like a really forced, over-the-top version of the original. With this one, I can have a little bit more fun with it. Although there are some really stupid elements like Michael Myers fantasizing about his mom every time he kills someone, the kills are pretty damn good. And there were a lot more scenes that I enjoyed from this movie than I did from the last one. Especially that opening scene from the hospital. I thought that was probably the only nod to the original that this actually did right.
Up next on my list would have to be Halloween Resurrection. I didn't think it was that bad, nor did I think it was that good. It's kind of like the Curse of Michael Myers in the sense where you're not going to miss anything if you don't watch it, but it's a thing that is entertaining if you do watch it. And the thing that I didn't like about this was, again, the character development wasn't that good. The only good character they had was Ben from Smart House and Sarah. Aside from that, Busta Rhymes was decent in the movie, but I don't think a lot of people were really cheering for him. I think a lot of people kind of hated his cocky attitude and him putting all those kids in danger, but at least he did save one of them. I think they went for more of a comedy angle with this movie than an actual horror movie, which is why it is ranked so low.
Well, first off, I think you're just completely jealous that Resurrection was much better than the remake, despite having some of the same flaws, but anyway, I'll get into that later. To prove that I have no bias toward the original, next on my list is the original Halloween movie. Growing up, this was the movie that terrorized me more than anything. But rewatching it today, it doesn't have that same effect, and it's not as entertaining. In fact, it's actually kind of boring watching it back now. Maybe it's because, unlike all the other ones, this one relies mostly on the psychological fear of Michael Myers more than the typical slasher element, which is probably why everyone considers this one to be the best of the series, because none of the other ones really captured that element the way that this one did. So I can respect that. But for me, the only part I like to go back and watch from this movie is the ending. Well, alright, and the boobs, but that's beside the point.
Halloween H2O. Halloween Water, I should say. Now, I can't tell you why I didn't like this movie very much. I mean, it did have some good character development. The plot was pretty good. It made sense. It was perfect timing. It had Jamie Lee Curtis, the original one, and they continued the storyline with her. But I just feel like Resurrection ruined it in the sense of a great ending, an awesome ending. I just didn't like that little swerve. I thought that whole heartfelt thing in the end where she wanted to save him, but instead she had to kill him. I thought that was a good scene that should have been left alone. The big blow off to the entire series just completely ruined by Resurrection. So again, that's one of the reasons Resurrection is ranked so low, is because not only did it ruin itself, but it ruined another movie too.
Just a reminder, Omar, we are ranking this series from the worst to the best. I notice you're kind of going a little bit backwards, but anyway, up next on my list, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Let me start off by saying that this movie is filled with lots of plot holes and weird concepts. And it seems like that's what they were going for with this trilogy of films after the original two. They try to make Michael Myers more supernatural. They gave him psychic powers over Jamie. Jamie was having visions of Michael Myers. And then they killed off the main character of Part 4 in the most irrelevant way possible, to where if you didn't watch Part 4, you would think that this was just some random character that increased the body count. So I thought that was probably the worst killing of a significant character in any series. But aside from that, the advantage I'll give this one is that it was more suspenseful and had more of a thriller feeling to it. It also had more of a backstory that you can get behind that made it more fun to watch.
Alright, I definitely have to agree with you on there. My next one would have to be Halloween 4. Now, this one was the return of Michael Myers after Halloween 3 just completely shit on the series. I thought this one was pretty decent. You know, they built up Rachel pretty well. And I'm glad he killed her boyfriend, actually. I hated that guy. And then you had Jamie, played by Danielle Harris, who has been throughout the series from the get-go. You know, Donald Pleasance, he has great acting throughout. Dr. Loomis, if you might know him as, and just a brilliant acting sequence from him. Great quotes from him. One thing that could have been better was they just added a little bit too many characters, if you know what I mean. Those hicks that were trying to kill Michael Myers to keep their town safe and stick it to the cops. You had the cops that were idiots that didn't know where Michael Myers was and got killed by him. These kids that were going to pick up Dr. Loomis on the freeway and then, you know, just blew sand in his face. You had that priest that they really didn't do anything with, and they wasted like 10 minutes of scene time just talking to Donald Pleasance for no reason. I don't know, it just felt like there was a lot of filler throughout the movie. I mean, through the end, I think they had a pretty cool scene in the end where he somehow magically managed to catch up to a 60-mile-per-hour truck and managed to hitchhike onto it, a moving truck. It was an unbelievable ending, but then again, Michael Myers does unbelievable stuff. I thought this movie was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular that, again, blew you away, but I thought that this was pretty damn solid.
Up next on my list is the return of Michael Myers. The thing I like the most about this movie is that the characters actually acknowledge that Michael Myers exists. And I really like that because it adds a different element from the typical slasher film, where you have the crazy old guy that no one believes and they all get killed for it. Here, not only do you have the cops, but you have the whole town out looking for Michael Myers, which of course leads to more action and a higher body count. So overall, I think this film defines the Halloween franchise the best. Everything with Michael Myers in it is fantastic. Everything else in the movie, And this really was the movie that started all those weird concepts that were so bad that they ended up having to reboot the entire series with H2O.
Anyway, coming up next on my list is Halloween 2. Now, this one was a tad bit of a disappointment for me. The problem I had with it is I wasn't totally invested in all of the characters. Like, the only one I really cared about was Jamie Lee Curtis and Dr. Loomis. They had that creepy nurse guy hit on Jamie Lee Curtis the whole movie, and how does that make him look, that he hit on a mentally unstable chick? Like, that didn't make me want to cheer for him at all. That made me want him to get killed, because it seemed like he was just kissing her ass just because she was in the hospital. And then they had all these other characters that just pissed me off. Like, some of them were just talking shit about Jamie Lee Curtis, saying that she was crazy, and I'm glad they got killed too. So, I mean, that's the problem I had with this one, was just the fact that they didn't have enough characters that you cared about.
We're getting into the best of the best. Kicking things off on my top 3, the original Halloween 2. Now, you make the argument that there aren't enough relatable characters in this film, to which I argue that there doesn't need to be. It's a slasher film. By this point, you just want to see Michael Myers kill off a bunch of people. But it's not like this was just complete filler either. We picked right up from where the first one left off, and I feel like this one did a fantastic job of picking up that same atmosphere that the first one had. Michael Myers still maintains that same mystique that he had in the first one, except unlike the first one, which was more psychological, this one plays up more on that old school slasher element. And that's what I like the most about this one, is that this set the standard for what a good slasher movie should be. Plus, this movie had the first pair of boobs that I ever seen in my life, so it holds a special place in my heart just for that alone. And just like how a lot of people like to say that no other movie captured the same element that the first one had, I don't think any other movie was able to capture the elements that this one had that made it so great.
I mean, I'd probably care more about the movie if they had more characters I cared about, like this next one I'm about to mention, Halloween 5. Halloween 5 was just so good because the kills were awesome. There were, like you said, some characters that you just wanted to see slashed. But the difference between this one and Halloween 2 was there was enough characters that you cared about that evened out with the characters that you wanted to see slashed. The only thing that I really did not like about this was it was the beginning of the whole cult angle that just got completely dropped in the sixth one. Halloween 5 was just absolutely great. You know, they did kill off Rachel, a shock value type scene that just broke your heart. And then what they did well was they built up Tina pretty damn well. Similar type of baby face that ended up sacrificing herself, which is still in my mind one of the most heartbreaking kills in history, where Tina just sacrificed herself to save Jamie. I really liked Halloween 5. I thought it was one of the best in the series, and the best one with a number in front of it.
Now, I'm probably going to get crucified for this, but number 2 on my list is Halloween Resurrection. Now, I completely understand why fans hate this movie so much, but for me, I had a lot of fun with this one. I really liked the reality TV concept of this. I thought that was a unique idea that added a different element to it. And just like part 2 had that perfect old school slasher element, this had that perfect new school slasher element. Now, people will complain that this was more of a comedy than a horror, which I can understand, but that's the direction the genre was taking at the time after the success of Scream, more light humor and self-awareness. At least this had an excuse as to why it did that, unlike the remakes. And it's not like this entire movie was a comedy either. Things got pretty dark and pretty suspenseful toward the end. I especially like the part where Decker was helping Sarah survive by trying to guide her away from Michael Myers. I thought that was a really unique and original concept. So, I don't care what anyone says, I was entertained by Halloween Resurrection.
Moving on, that was totally awful, that movie was. Anyway, on to my number 2 in the series, the original Halloween. I mean, what else can you say about it? The classic that started it all, the night he came home. With your analysis, you did say that they didn't really do anything fun until like the end of the movie, but I thought that kind of added to the eerie suspense and the eerie feel to it. They took their time with it. They didn't rush any of the kills like some of the other ones are guilty of doing. They built up characters well enough. They had cool kill scenes, like when she killed that nerd with the glasses that somehow got that hot chick. That was always unbelievable. I always wanted him to kill that nerd because that guy was just dating out of his league and just deserved to die. The ending scene where, they took off his mask, that one was pretty stupid. That's the only reason it's not number one, is because they showed his face and he didn't look intimidating at all. He just looked like a plain and normal guy. And I think that this one was just revolutionary, paved the way for other movies such as your beloved Friday the 13th, where in the first one his mom was doing the killing. This one, Michael Myers did it his damn self.
The best movie of this series has to be Halloween H2O. When you think about everything that makes a good slasher and a good Halloween movie in general, this blends all those elements together to make for a perfectly well-rounded movie. This has the best story in the series, the best developed characters. It has a perfect mix of horror, thriller, humor with a little bit of action. We finally get that epic showdown between Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers. The only complaint you could probably make is that it's not as dark or as scary as most of the others, which is understandable, but I don't think any other movie in the series has as many elements as this one had. And I will agree with you that this was the perfect conclusion of the series, and Resurrection did kind of take away a little bit from that, but if you just look at this movie for what it was a perfect culmination of the entire series, and it was just a perfect film on its own.
Yes, indeed. Again, the only reason that I didn't rank Halloween Water higher was because the ending was ruined by Resurrection. But aside from that, I can agree with a lot of points you're making. But the only problem I had with that one, like you said, was it wasn't dark enough. I don't think Michael Myers felt scary enough in that movie. And I don't know, maybe that was just me. But on to my number one, the best Halloween of them all. Halloween, the remake from 2007. Now, before I get my throat butchered and slashed, what is it that has been a recurring theme for us here that we kind of look for in the horror movie? A good mixture of dark and ominous, check. Characters that you want to see get slashed, check. Characters that you want to see saved, check. Pretty much an awesome plot that explains everything, check. Watching the original one, it didn't make any sense to me as to why Michael Myers was going around killing people. It just didn't make sense. And, with that interview where they said that, some people are just evil, that's what they were trying to portray with Michael Myers, I never really bought into that. It gives you the whole backstory. This is why Michael Myers is how he is today. And then they put it over that he's evil, which makes sense because this made him evil. That's the only thing that I guess you could say was wrong with it, was Laurie was a lot more likable in the first one, and she was a little bit more of a bitch in this one, so you didn't really want to cheer for her that much. But, aside from that, the plot was awesome, the movie was awesome, they showed us backstory a lot more, which I really enjoyed. To this day, remains the best Halloween installment of them all. And before I wrap this up, I just want to say, the summer of 2007 was jam-packed with movies. It has two of my favorite movies of all time, which is this one and Superbad. Yes, definitely. And again, even though it seemed like we did bury the majority of these movies, rest assured that we did enjoy a good portion of these. There were just some that we liked a whole hell of a lot better than others. And this whole series is just awesome. It's made up by a few greats and some decent and some bad. So it kind of gives you a taste of everything, does this series. So I think this is why it will go down as the greatest horror movie series of all time, right? With Scream right on its ass. But I definitely think that this one is the greatest movie series of all time. Anyway, this has been the MTMR Reviews with the Halloween Review Series, saying yada yada yada, blah blah blah.